So although prediction markets can offer a big improvement over some existing processes, they're not going to solve every problem, that's for sure. You still have to have people at the top who can interpret that data in the right way. So for instance, I wouldn't say that a prediction market necessarily predicts something like the financial crisis, because very few people predicted it. There's a few economists, Dr. Doom, Nouriel Roubini, basically, but I don't think that kind of person would be enough to move a market like this. So you still have to have smart people at the top to understand what the data might be able to tell them.
I think one of the real dangers, the big danger, is availability bias. You know, so if the information is there with a quick search, or you end up on a page, you say, oh, that information is there, you don't look any deeper, you don't ask, is there additional information that I might need to know? But because it's right there, you go with it. And I think that's a real challenge of sort of a social software, collective intelligence kind of model. So leave it at that.
All right, well, I have a question about reputation filtering, which came up a few questions ago. I'm active on a few websites where they have reputation filtering systems. And what I've noticed is every person, every participant has this sort of their own intelligence level, and they vote down ideas that are either below that level or that are above that level. And so the system doesn't select the best ideas any more than Hollywood selects the best movies, right? It ends up amplifying and selecting the sort of middle of the road, ideas. I wondered if any of you have observed that, and if you have any ideas for coping with it.
I would say that that kind of thing really reflects the culture. And it's important to understand the culture you're working within and how they behave offline as well as online, because that's going to skew it one way or another.
And I would add, I think this is where transparency comes in, because all of those biases you just talked about have occurred in our culture, our human culture throughout time. But the more you can make that transparent as to how that's happening, it increases the chance that someone will see that happening and then call attention to it. And most of those kind of errors are, the moment you witness it or that you identify it, it's fairly easy to correct. Just, I think an analogy that holds is in Wikipedia right now, for instance, there's been this ongoing tension between inclusionism and deletionism. And by and large, the deletionists have won. Over the last couple of years. Why? I don't know. It's not a filing cabinet. You can't fill it up. But as a result, others have stood up wikis that do nothing but archive the articles that have been deleted from Wikipedia. And so by having transparency and the ability to move data around, then you can have someone come in from another dimension and say, well, I don't agree with that. Let me attack that problem.
Great. Well, one of the wonderful things about the web is having an audit trail. The question I want to ask is a little bit different. I do work with smaller organizations, and their approach to collective intelligence is really motivated by ideas that in the military intelligence community would be called knowledge superiority. Taking the notion of OODA loops, the ability to be able to, observe, orient, decide, and act, faster than the other guy can kick his ass. And it goes a little bit to the point you were making, but that there's the time value of knowledge or an organizational capacity. And so this becomes this kind of a requirement of it's the template of the organization such that you can have this techno-social collaborative process that can, that can marshal its collective intelligence. The question I want to kind of pose is, now we've sort of talked, in a softer sense, a lot about of collective intelligence, but in this harder kind of notion of, like the whole point of doing this is to meet certain mission needs. In time and in a way that, that in a tempo kind of sense, is valuable. How do you see those, what are the prerequisites to being able to marshal it in that way? I think it also connects to some of the points you were making about, You know, is there a guy up front that actually thinks about this? I mean, if you have an interesting question, it tells you what knowledge you need. Anyway, but let me let you guys just kind of respond to that.
I'll take a quick stab at it and then pass the mic. I think one of the challenges is that our organization, the federal government in particular, if we think of it that way, is a very big organization, and there are people way out at the pointy end, and then there's a big mass of people back at the, back at home base. And the challenge is in trying to make sure that that whole organism can act at a rate that the OODA loop needs it to act at. So right now, there are soldiers in Afghanistan trying to stay alive, trying to not get, taken out by an IED. Well, right now, that OODA loop is largely contained in a pretty small microcosm of people helping those soldiers do that. How could we better leverage the collective intelligence of the entire organism to make sure it can act fast enough to protect those individual soldiers that are out there? I think that's part of, so for me, one of the reasons I advocate for Intellipedia so actively is because I think the biggest challenge is getting home base, the big mass of people that are back at home, to be as agile as we're needing to be out at the front.
I think your question describes part of the motivation behind Sensorpedia as well, in that often the problem is not that we don't have the information that's not available, but it's often lives in little stovepipe systems, here and there, and it might be proprietary, maybe standards-based, but how do we bring those together in a timely manner where we can search across all those systems and find the information that we need to do knowledge discovery and data mining and sensor fusion, those types of things. And so I think applying that loosely coupled framework approach where you can extract the metadata that you need and the user-supplied classification type of approach really allows you to query across those systems and break down some of those silos.
Thank you.
All right, if you guys could put on your prophetic or oracle hat here for a second for this question. So the idea I want to ask the question about here is niche and niche, and just like, so I see this paradigm of where you have this technology solution that's so specific to one person that it's perfect for what they want to do, okay? And then I see this other solution that's so broad and general that any human being could use it and it would serve some purpose for them, but it would be so vague it just wouldn't serve any purpose whatsoever. So the question is, for this collective intelligence kind of paradigm and this idea, how does the niche fill into this? How specific should you make it so that you have the critical mass of you have enough people to use it where it's interesting and it's specific enough where it holds people's attention, versus just being this total mash of all these, the ultimate mashup of every bit in the universe that no one really cares about. Does everyone understand that question? Okay.
I think for us, that's the reason we didn't focus so much on just building one big database in the sky that can hold all this information. But we want to identify what are those principles that can be applied to your niche solution. So, I mean, we were applying that to our particular problem, but we want to make sure that we're vocalizing what these things are and then how you can apply them to a very specific domain. We're not trying to build one application or one framework for everybody. It's the same thing with a lot of the social networking things they mentioned, the lessons learned that they have from there. I think you can roll in and apply it to your own solution development. I think there is a space for a lot of niche applications and frameworks that we can learn from one another.
I mean, I started by really focusing on the users and also recognizing that we had a lot of very customized collaboration tools already. So why was I going to do another collaboration tool? And what I saw was that we had really good ones that were very formal, very rigorous, with a lot of depth to them, but we didn't have a lot in the ad hoc space. Hey, I have an informal team, we've just come together, we need a quick way to share some files, have a conversation, and then be able to save that conversation for later when other people joined. And I saw that that was the space that was going to be the most valuable for ours. But I think you have to do a lot of thinking about who's your audience, how do you expect this to be used, what problem are you solving with it? And if you can't answer the what problem are you solving, then that would be the place to stop.
Yeah, I have one thing I'll add, I guess, in the context of prediction markets. The way an economist would normally talk about this issue is that there's economy of scale to any of these social tools. The more people you have involved, the more value that everybody gets out of it. So there's a sort of a natural push towards creating tools that appeal to lots and lots of people at once. So most of these tools